This podcast is made possible by Avalara and Ledge.
Hi, it's Aaron Alt, the CFO at Cardinal Health, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode number 989.
But we're also at an interesting time. We've got AI beginning to make its way into finance organizations to help improve productivity and accuracy. And we've got a continued movement to better technologies that can help make us more efficient. And I've got a continued shift of certain parts of my finance workflows to lower cost geographies. So I think I'm looking at leaning into these three things to optimize my finance team with the most solid foundation to build on for the future.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Jeremy Johnson, CFO of Dayforce. Back in September of 2021, Jeremy Johnson, Senior Vice President of Finance at Dayforce, decided it was time to test his mettle. A decision that would take him far from where he began, only to return with a leadership perspective somewhat different from what he expected. Determined to challenge himself and expand his horizons, Johnson left the familiarity at Dayforce, where he had steadily advanced his career for the past 9 years, to accept a CFO position with SmartRecruiters. At SmartRecruiters, an unexpected turn of events summoned Johnson to serve as interim CEO, a leadership stint at the top that would help broaden Johnson's CFO mindset. Or so we learn on today's episode when we speak to Dayforce CFO Jeremy Johnson. That's right, Johnson returned to Dayforce in the CFO office. That story and more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co, that's ledge.co, to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. Hello, we're speaking with Jeremy Johnson, CFO of Dayforce. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Jeremy, as always, we're going to ask you to take a look back, and we're looking to identify those experiences that you feel you walked away from with an experience that was going to help you grow professionally and advance you upward someday to the CFO office. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, really early on in my career, I had a chance to be a part of some really critical meetings that shaped who I am today, the leader I am today. Specifically, I built a relationship with the CFO of Capella University at the time. And Capella University was my second job, the job right out of public accounting, where I had worked in Minneapolis, and Capella had just gone public. And this is 2008, 2009. And the CFO of Capella was a woman named Lois Martin, and she has since become a critical mentor of mine. And I was responsible at the time for writing the 10Ks, the 10Qs, the 8Ks, the managing the disclosure committee, all SEC reporting. It was a great job, especially early on in my career. Once I got that job relatively under control, though, I began seeking out more. What could I do more? And there's some really nice parallels in SEC reporting to things like investor relations and FP&A and management reporting and internal reporting. So I started doing a little bit of all of them. So for example, I began owning Lois's Q&A packet for the earnings call. So making sure she knew all the answers to the most likely questions she'd be asked. This thing was a big document. It was a 30-page document at the time. I began to organize it in things like hot topics and revenue and profitability and other categories to make it easier to navigate. And then I took that to the next level, and I began listening back to earnings call transcripts and having conversations with our head of investor relations and proactively seeking out answers to new and upcoming questions that I thought we might get asked during the earnings calls. And I also saw a need at the time to create a financial reporting package. That included all the trended financial information and non-financial metrics that we reported externally. And it required me to really build a relationship across FP&A and other business leaders across sales and marketing and operations. And it was supplemental to the Q&A document, but eventually became the Bible and the source of truth for our leadership. And all of this got me so deep into the quarterly reporting process that I actually eventually ended up sitting next to Lois during all of the earnings calls. And this is me as a 20-something in way ahead of my skis on where I thought I would be in my career. And my job is simple there. And Lois was clear to me, don't talk. You got to be super quiet. But I was in the background and I was writing notes to her on a piece of paper. I was flipping the Q&A document to pages, so if she needed it, she could reference it. And I was eventually helping them prepare for earnings calls, sitting in a boardroom while we role played questions, and eventually even supporting the CEO, an amazing guy named Steve Shank, who founded Capella University. And those earnings call and preparation processes, they were transformative to me for early on in my career. It was like getting a backstage pass to a concert. I got a chance to see up close and personal how some of the best business leaders in and I thought the world anyways, and I still think, do their job. How they get to answer questions and how they message across and get their message across, and then how they thought quickly on their feet. So I also think it lit a fire under me to learn more about FP&A and management reporting, because I was drawn to that side of finance when I kind of got exposure to it, and it's where I ended up going next in my career. So I think a few takeaways for me. No one ever pulled me aside and said, "This is going to be part of your job. Now here's a raise, go do it." I saw a need, I saw an opportunity to do the work. I think I did a good job, and I was given more opportunity from there. And then the other takeaway for me is that so much of my leadership style came from observing those leaders that I got a chance to work with and that I respect so much. And I think it's choosing carefully and finding the opportunities to mimic their behavior in certain ways, and then putting my own unique personal twist on them. It's kind of how I've developed my leadership style over time.
Wow, that's a nice overview. Some insights in there for us. If it's all right, I'd like to just tip your hand a little bit for the listeners, just because I think you have an interesting story behind you, and I want to touch on when you first leave Capella and step into which was then Ceridian, of course, the company you're leading today as CFO. But you were there 9 years. You spent 9 years, and you come up through the FP&A ranks, and you reach the upper ranks as senior vice president. And of course, you leave there and you step into a CFO role where you are for nearly 3 years, I think, and at SmartRecruiters, and then you are invited or recruited back to be CFO of Dayforce. And I just wanted to share that background before I ask you to go back in time for us and think a little bit about that transition that you made from Capella to Dayforce / Ceridian. That had to be an interesting transition. One would think there was perhaps more layers at Dayforce / Ceridian. It seems like that had to have been a significant career step.
Yeah, exactly. When I left Capella, I was managing basically the expense side of FP&A, and had a bunch of analysts reporting into me at Capella University, and the phone rang, and it was this CFO that I was talking about, Lois Martin, who had just left Capella about a year ago, and she said, "Hey, guess what? I took a new job. It's at this company called Ceridian." And we're going to, I want you to come and join me. We're going to transform this company into a more modern HCM player. And I have to be honest, I didn't know who really Ceridian was. I didn't know much about them. I did some research. I met with a few people, and I came over, one, with the trust that, Lois had in me and that I had in her. And two, with an idea that we could actually make some change and really do, take something that was that needed fixing and help fix it. I was open for anything, and this has been a theme in my career. I kind of go into opportunities saying I don't have many expectations at all. You want me to go clean the bathrooms? I'll clean the bathrooms. Let's just do something, right? And I took that same experience both with the IPO that we did at Ceridian and Dayforce. I took that same kind of mindset when I went to SmartRecruiters and became the CFO over there, and eventually the interim CEO for a while. And I now have that in my seat here at Dayforce as the CFO. Is look, I just want to make positive change and be open to a lot of different things.
Before we ask you about Dayforce and that chapter, can you go back in time maybe and share with us something about the IPO? And I forget when that was. You can refresh our memory there. But again, this would have been your first involvement with a company going public. Am I right about that? And
that's right.
Tell something about that.
It was also a strategic moment in my career. I think it shaped me into the leader that I am today. At the time, it was in, I think, 2016 when we kicked off the planning for our IPO, and it had always been on we could do this, but it became real in 2016, and we actually started, actually working towards it. I had been asked to add investor relations to my job responsibilities. I was in the FP&A team. I was managing the FP&A team. I was also managing a revenue recognition group. We were going through the ASC 606 revenue recognition implementation. And that team reported to me as well, which was strange. But I kind of loved getting into different things. And at first, when I was asked by the CFO at the time, Lois had moved on and a guy named Arthur took over. And I said, no, I don't want to add IR to my job responsibilities. And this was just in a conversation we had. I said, I don't see it. Doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. And I didn't want to get pigeonholed into IR, a career in IR. And our CEO called me later that day or week, I don't remember. And he said, I think you should do this. I think it's going to be a good opportunity for you to see a different side of the business, especially as we approach this IPO. And that's what tilted me. And I said, I obliged. I said, let's do it. Let's try and have some fun here. So I maintained my revenue recognition and FP&A duties. I added investor relations. And in 2007, I was in the seat of this VP of Finance and Investor Relations, and I was asked to kind of lead the Dayforce IPO from the finance side of things, from start to finish, and from the kickoff process to the bake-offs to where we selected our syndicate group and interviewed sell-side analysts, to the teach-in sessions where we talked and walked through those sell-side analysts through our model and the drivers of the business, all the way to writing the S1 and the testing the waters sessions that we did with investors on making sure our messaging was hitting the right things. The meetings with the stock exchanges and sitting down at the NYSE and meeting our market maker and interviewing a bunch of them. Preparation for the roadshow, the book building, like pricing, the ringing the bell, the celebration. I mean, it was such a transformative experience. And each one of those I could spend an hour and talk to you about. But I learned so much. And I think the best experience for me was really crafting the story and modifying it based on the feedback we'd gotten, and then nailing it, like delivering it consistently and making sure that each one of us was on the same page internally, and that each detail that we were talking through was meticulously planned as we could get. It was one long experience that I'll never forget, but I'm forever grateful to our CEO and our CFO for asking me and having trusted me to lead this process.
What's also interesting is where you do go to SmartRecruiters when you think of talent, and I think of HCM space as, okay, this is applications and software that really help companies manage their talent and retain their talent. And here's SmartRecruiters as a company that really helps companies to find the right people. It just seems as if these two companies sort of share the same ecosystem. How did you look at it? What were you thinking?
Yeah, it's both on the Dayforce side of things with the payroll, the HCM, and then as I moved into SmartRecruiters, all under this HR tech umbrella. And it's such a wide world. There's amazing technology that's being created to try and solve all the problems that we as employees deal with on a day in and day out basis. And SmartRecruiters with trying to solve the problem of connecting people to jobs and jobs to people. And I remember the founder, when I was interviewing for that job, said to me, "Why can't hiring somebody be as simple as booking an Airbnb? Like why can't I just kind of look at that person and look at that and scroll through and say, I want to interview that person." You talk to them and then you hire that person, and it's not that easy. And that was his mission, is to try to. I mean, he had bold missions, and this is Jerome Turnick, who again is an amazing founder and visionary in HR tech. Bold visions of zero unemployment, and this is the kind of leader that I love working with. David Ossip, our CEO, is another one of these. These people are true visionaries that also have great operating experience, and I'm happy to work alongside them and help grow businesses.
Anything changed in your mindset when it comes to talent? And I think you just hinted at a few, actually. But as you returned to Dayforce and you spent that time looking through sort of a different lens at the talent equation, you come back and you must look at it somewhat differently. But I'm wondering what it is about talent that you feel obligated to share now that you had a tour duty as a CFO inside the recruitment realm.
Two things really. One is that I think the best talent is always within your company. I think there is opportunities that people want and likely deserve, and you've already gone through that hurdle of hiring that person. So let's now utilize that person. So how can we, push internal mobility inside our organizations a little bit further, which is a form of talent acquisition, right? And the second thing is we haven't solved the problem yet. So let's continue to work harder on ensuring that employees can find the jobs that they want, and then obviously we can retain those people and make our work life better.
Now we're gonna assume that Dayforce didn't have to pay a recruiter to engage you to return. We would say, is it a relationship or is it a recruiter that brought you back? One would imagine it's the former.
It is a relationship. That's exactly right, Jack. It's and actually a bunch of relationships. I had a great opportunity to work with most of the executive. We call it executive operating committee, or EOC, prior to even leaving for SmartRecruiters. I think of the folks on our executive team right now, I've worked with all but one in the past, and certainly have a great working relationship with our CEO, who the CEO and the CFO need to be kind of hand in hand on a lot of things. So certainly a relationship for me.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. We will likely have a few more career-related questions for you later, but right now let's find out about this new company that you've joined, Dayforce. Tell us about what is Dayforce about today and this recent rebranding and what have you. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Dayforce is a global leader in human capital management, or we call it HCM technology. Our flagship product is also called Dayforce, which provides full suite HCM to our users, including functionality for human resources, payroll, benefits, workforce management, and talent intelligence. Last year, we were $1.5 billion in revenue, which was up around 21.5% year over year. And we had $133 million in operating profit and an adjusted EBITDA of around 27%, or just over 27% margin. We've got approximately 6,400 customers and more than 6.8 million global employees using the platform as of the end of last year. And we've got a very sticky product with gross retention rates over 97% consistently for the past 3 years. And we're well recognized by third parties like Gartner as a leader in their Magic Quadrant for cloud HCM suites for 1,000 employees plus for 4 straight years. Dayforce, the product, was launched in 2013 with Dayforce and Ceridian coming together. And as I mentioned, we IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange in 2018. And just this past February, we evolved the brand further by bringing the whole company under one united brand, Dayforce, which we believe can amplify our promise to make work life better. If it's okay, I'll get into a couple of key differentiators and who we are and what we do different. It's we have a differentiator that's key for us, and it's called this continuous calculation of net pay. And it's simple, really. Most payroll companies were built as a payroll company and then added things like workforce management and think like time clocks and timesheets and rules around shifts and overtime. And then more recently added things like HCM, recruiting, compensation management, performance management. But because all of this was built on separate systems, you ended up with a problem around workflow and user experience. The workflow meant that payroll can't start running until the end of the pay period, which means you get all the timesheets in, and then you can start doing your job. But you're left with a really short amount of time to run payroll. And they usually, when we surveyed users back in 2011-12, they committed payroll when they ran out of time, not when they were ready to commit payroll. And second, you're left with a user experience problem, such that the user enters their information 2 or 3 different times across different systems if it needs to change, or HR does it for them and creates manual workflows. So with Dayforce, we built everything into one platform. It's a single system with one employee record for the user, cutting across all modules: recruiting, payroll, workforce management, benefits, the entire employee life cycle from hire to retire. So anytime a critical aspect of that employee's record changes, the net pay is automatically changed in real time. So if I move a state or local region, and just move across state lines, my net pay is automatically changed immediately to reflect the tax changes. If I add a dependent, if I have a child, my net pay changes. If I change, withholding on 401k or benefits, my net pay changes. And so it allows us to do some pretty disruptive things. We have an innovative product called Dayforce Wallet. And that's where a user can open an app that's separate from the payroll app, and they can see how much money they've actually earned during the active pay period at any given point in time. And they can see their gross to net calculation live. And then they can take that and say, I'd like to add $100 to my wallet. And we run a full payroll behind the scenes. So we treat any day like it's a payday. And we get the proper tax forms into the proper jurisdictions in a fully compliant mid-pay cycle, essentially. We also create a pretty unique user experience where users can change their own information in the system. In one location, it's reflected across the entire product. And these are the simple things that make a difference to an employee and allow them to focus on their jobs and not, the administration. So we focus on delivering quantifiable value to our customers with a true ROI or return on investment to switch to Dayforce. So Dayforce's single solution, our single database, our single continuous calculation engine helps our customers achieve their, efficiencies they need, the productivity and compliance. We call it simplicity at scale.
Now, I just want to once more point out, you arrive back at Dayforce this January. You step into the CFO office, but you now have this fresh set of eyes, and you've been operating in another enterprise at a C-suite level for the past 3 years. So again, this fresh set of eyes that you're applying to this organization, what are you experiencing exactly? What is it that you now might want to get done?
Yeah, I did. I mentioned I was lucky enough to work with most of the executive team. I was also lucky enough to work with most of my direct reports, prior to leaving. So of my, I think, 10 direct reports, I had worked with 8 of them beforehand as peers. And the only new people were the 2 that replaced me. And my job had been separated into 2 when I left. And those are the new folks. So I trust the team I work with. I know what they do. I've worked with them in the past. I have a relationship, and it's a huge benefit for me. But we're also at an interesting time. We've got AI beginning to make its way into finance organizations to help improve productivity and accuracy. And we've got a continued movement to better technologies that can help make us more efficient. And I've got a continued shift of certain parts of my finance workflows to lower cost geographies. So I think I'm looking at leaning into these 3 things to optimize my finance team with the most solid foundation to build on for the future. There's clearly a lot of nervousness during a CFO transition. I've been a part of a number in my career, and I know that people ask themselves, am I going to like this person? What if I don't? So when it was actually announced that I was coming back to the organization, there was a collective sigh of relief. Someone they know, someone they can trust. And I hope I can kind of live up to their expectations there anyways.
As you look at how the company has grown in your absence, and you brought up AI, and for many organizations, that conversation is something that's happened over the last 12 months, at least, when ChatGPT showed up, I guess, a little more than 15 months ago, I guess. How is it part of your strategy going forward? And I think you indicated, there are things we can do here. Where would you expect to leverage AI? And most likely you're already leveraging it perhaps in certain areas of the business.
I think it's such a good question. It's timely, right? Actually, I was talking to some investment bankers the other day, and I think they must have like a checklist that says every meeting they have to mention AI in some form of AI, because it seems like every single meeting I'm talking about it. But it is top of mind. And I'd say, Dayforce is probably, and I'll speak to the finance side of this, is probably similar to a lot of the organizations you've spoken to. We're AI curious, certainly. And we've got a huge opportunity, but we're really just dipping our toe in the water. I think there's quite a bit of FOMO out there, like the fear of missing out right now. I think our vendors are offering a lot of co-pilots is how we see it today, and a few other edge use cases. I think it's clear to me that if we want to utilize AI, we have to drive the change. So the opportunities that I see to use AI in finance are probably like sales, revenue, and demand forecasting is one area. I think error detection, making sure and trying to eliminate errors completely from, just to be radical, completely from our system. Reporting and analysis support for our FP&A teams. Just being a former FP&A person, I think there's definitely a use case there. I think cash forecasting, improving the accuracy of our cash forecasting. So trying to better understand when customers are going to pay their bills, and using that to drive, our forecast. Dayforce has a money movement business. We move a lot of our customer funds. So I think any fraud detection and prevention in our money movement business, as well as credit scoring for our Dayforce wallet business, I think could be an interesting use case. And then clearly on operational efficiency. So data entry, reconciliations, accounts payable, for example, is a really good, I think, use case that we'll see probably sooner rather than later. So I think, it's interesting, like even outside of AI though, I think the role of a finance professional is changing in front of our eyes. My FP&A leader and I were having a discussion the other day, and she came to me with a job posting for a financial analyst that she saw. And I really think it exemplifies what I mean. It's the job description said the candidate for a financial analyst needed to have a few skills that I didn't think I would ever see in a job description for a financial analyst. It was Python, right? You got to understand Python to be able to unlock data sets and derive insights that can influence strategic decisions. I think it said Tableau, not just to present data, but to visualize it. SQL, for data retrieval, swiftly navigating through financial records and customer data. And then, of course, Excel was still on there, right? Because Excel is still critical for everything. But it's crazy to think, to me anyways, that 10 years ago, a job posting probably would have said PowerPoint, Word, Excel, maybe familiarity with the GL system. I'll tell you what, I'm here for it. I think it's going to be great. I've communicated it down to my team, and we're starting to think about different ways to train our team so that we can upskill them for the future of finance.
You just mentioned your FP&A leader. He or she is down the hall having a conference room with some of the financial analysts. And Jeremy swings open the door. What are they thinking Jeremy is going to ask them about?
Probably sales. I'd say a few of the metrics that we focus on, like sales efficiency is one. For sure, I ask about a lot, and we focus on it a lot of the time. I think we have a larger, financial analyst team focused on sales than any other area in our business. Interestingly enough, this was probably top of mind when I was CFO at SmartRecruiters as well. And so it's starting, top level of customer acquisition costs. How much does it cost us to acquire a new customer, and then really just peeling the onion back to understand which geographies and segments and industries are performing the best or the worst. And then what do we do about it? But then also going further down the marketing funnel. So where are we spending money on? What leads does that marketing spend drive, and how much does it cost, and what channel is the most efficient and why? And I think it's the reason for that is it's really easy to waste money in sales and marketing. And keeping a pulse on the efficiency side of things really helps understand where we can utilize our dollars better to drive growth, and where we should be leaning in more to drive more efficiency and growth. I think maybe the other thing that we talk about a lot these days is free cash flow. So there's two factors for this one. I think one is no better metric in my mind to show how the business was performing. So cash from operations minus CapEx, there's literally nowhere to hide in that metric. There's no adjustments or non-GAAP measures or anything like that. It's as close as naked as you can get to in financial reporting, I think. And second is we're being asked about it quite a bit by the investment community, focusing on free cash flow. And the reason for that is I do think we're at an inflection point in our own business where we're mature enough to start to generate some solid free cash flow this year. And even outside of our overall profitability, investors are focusing on that conversion from adjusted EBITDA to cash flow, free cash flow. And that requires me to look more at balance sheet. So I'm focusing more on the balance sheet. And we're focusing on metrics like DSO and DPO and CapEx spend. So truly like financial operations and we're focusing on enhancing our finance operating model, which is a fun part to be looking at right now.
Well, I think I know I like the name Dayforce, but I want you to finish a sentence for us here. People would be surprised to learn when it comes to the costs of rebranding. What exactly?
All the legal stuff. Certainly, I think we all expect marketing, and you're changing the website, and you're changing, all the customer acquisition facing things. The legal behind the scenes stuff. So the names on the invoices, all the different legal entities that we have, and all the sales tax stuff, and I mean that is something that you don't want to do often is change your name because of that reason.
Well, thank you for that. We're up to our finance strategic moment question. And this is a moment of insight, perhaps, that you experienced along the way in your career that led you to pursue an opportunity, avoid a risk. I don't know, could be most anything. What would you tell us is a finance strategic moment?
I think becoming the interim CEO of SmartRecruiters, and that might seem a little counterintuitive because becoming the CEO was a finance strategic moment, but let me explain. So this is the moment I was able to fully feel the full force of how a financial plan can be utilized to create focus and alignment across the business. And maybe I'll just do a quick backstory here. I had left Dayforce in 2021. I wanted to test myself on whether I could be a CFO and how I would perform in the role. And like I'm sure some of the people listening to this that can relate to, I used to sit there and VP of finance or SVP of finance role and look at the CFOs and I'd work for, and I think sometimes I can do that. I can do that, and I knew I could. But there's really only one way to find out for sure. So I left Dayforce to become the CFO of SmartRecruiters in the summer of 2021. And we had just, at the time, SmartRecruiters had just finished their Series E funding round. And we raised $110 million at a $1.5 billion valuation with one mission, and that was growth. At the time, we were growing the company something like around 50%. And we were also burning around $10 million, $10 to $15 million in cash each year. And after the raise, our plan was to accelerate growth to 60 or 70%, and also increase our cash burn to 30 or $40 million. Of course, I think we would do that by hiring sellers, by hiring marketers, by hiring R&D people, whatever we needed to grow the business. Well, that plan was in place for about 6 months until early 2022. And this is the time we started hearing about inflation, about the Ukraine and Russia conflict, about central banks raising interest rates. And essentially, we were on the precipice of the end of free money. And 1 quarter after approving our budget, again, this is my first budget as the CFO, at the next board meeting, the board basically said, guys, the cash you have right now, the cash you have on your balance sheet after the Series E raise, assume that's the last cash you'll be able to raise for the next 5 years. And they pushed us to come up with a path to profitability. And so remember, from burning $30 or $40 million a year to let's get profitable as fast as possible. And our founder and CEO at the time and the board didn't really agree on what that path forward would be. And the difficult decision was made that the CEO would move into a chairman role. And they asked if I would be willing to lead the company on an interim basis through the next challenging phase. And I'd never wanted to be CEO, but two things made me say yes. First, I didn't see another option for the company. And second, I could see a path forward very clearly with the financial model that I had been working on with my FP&A team and collaborating on with the board. And so I said yes, and I immediately pulled together the remaining executive leadership team, and I told them our plan. And that was one, we got to cut 25% of our headcount. Basically, the entire amount of people that we added during the last 6 months, we got to go and cut. And it doesn't mean exactly one for one, but that's the amount. Second, we have to focus our product roadmap. In this new world where we can't afford to do everything, we had to make the tough decisions and choose to not do some things that we may have wanted to do in the past. Number three, we had to slow the growth. As we all know, growth costs money, and we needed to settle into a lower growth rate on a more efficient sales and marketing spend until I felt like our growth could grow faster, more efficiently. And then finally, we had to rebuild the culture. After the founder and the CEO stepped into the chairman role, I had to cut 25% of the workforce, and our engagement scores were terrible. They were 42% of our people were engaged. And my goal that I set for the team was to get them near 60 or 70% by the end of the year. And so with all of this, I believed we could be profitable, both P&L and cash basis, by the end of 2023. And it was a goal we ended up achieving. And we did it with a solid financial plan. We did it with some really collaborative execution and some diehard employees that also had this belief. And it came down to focus and alignment around the financial plan for me. We had to focus on the key things we needed to get done. We had alignment across the organization on what those things were. And then we executed. And I won't tell you it went perfectly. It was definitely not smooth sailing across that, but it was a very strategic moment in my career in utilizing a financial plan to drive strategic decisions and change a company's direction, really. And I learned more things about myself that I didn't know. And I certainly pushed my abilities more than I ever could and gained a lot of respect for the CEOs that do this day in and day out.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
We're going to jump to the mentoring round where actually we want you to revisit that chapter one more time because we look at that first 30 days, 60 days. You were just sharing us stepping into a CEO role. So that's an added bonus for us. But what we usually ask here is about the CFO role. And you finally get to the CFO office, SmartRecruiters, and there must have been something. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Is this part of this job? I did, something that maybe you wish if you could go back in time and tell yourself about the job or the role that maybe you just didn't know, as you stepped into it, it just didn't come together for you. An epiphany of sorts. Anything?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny when I started at SmartRecruiters. Again, I was willing to do anything, and they certainly, I think, gave me anything. It was, and maybe I should have asked more questions, but they said, "Okay, hey, welcome, CFO. You are also going to own HR. You're going to own privacy, and you're going to own legal. So here's your team, along with finance." And it was, look, it's great. I only owned HR for a little bit, and we were just in a transition period, but all of it really good learning experience. I think that's maybe the point, though, is I wish, I think someone could have told me, everything's a learning experience. It sounds pretty obvious, but I think it's so easy to take a short-term, checklist type view to a day or a week or a month or a quarter or a year. I wish someone would have helped remind me during the busiest of times, take every meeting and every interaction and every mistake as a learning opportunity and help prepare you for the future. It's just be a sponge and soak everything up. And it's not just a task. So I think, I probably did an okay job of that in my career, but I do look back and think to myself, would have been less task oriented and more of a sponge in certain circumstances.
Okay, great one for us. Thank you. We'd like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side, Jeremy. We were wondering if there's something maybe your colleagues don't know about you. Again, you've had a few years at Dayforce back in time, but there must be something that perhaps they don't know, something most people don't know about you. Anything?
Sure. There's a story that my family likes to tell at holidays and things like that. It's a funny story, but it's actually something that's kind of quietly driven me for a long time. It happened when I was a teenager, and at the time, my job was I was caddying at a local country club in Dublin, Ohio, where I grew up. Now, Dublin, Ohio is the home of Wendy's, the fast food chain. And everyone in the town knew of Dave Thomas, who was the late founder of Wendy's. And he was like a local celebrity. And if you ever saw him around, it was just a huge, huge deal. This is before social media and everything, but it was a big deal. And you tell your friends. Well, one morning in the summer, it was supposed to be a day off for me. And my mom walks into my room and wakes me up at 6:30 in the morning. And she says, "Hey, Club Pro's on the phone. She wants to know if you want to caddy." And typical sleepy teenager on his day off, says, "No, I'm good. It's my day off. Let someone else do it." And my mom walks into my brother's bedroom, the next door, and he also a caddy, and asks him the same question. He jumps right up and typical firstborn child, and says, "Sure, I'll make some more money." And later that day, my brother comes home and he's got $250 in his hand, and a great story about how he got to caddy for Dave Thomas and a U.S. senator from Ohio. He got the double bag. And I just thought to myself, what do I have? Some sleep? It's unbelievable. So from that moment on, I try to think about how attitude really drives and makes a difference. And it's, every time I think about hitting the snooze button, I think about Dave Thomas.
That's terrific. Thank you. Outstanding. We always like to ask if you have a book selection for us. Doesn't have to be a business book. Might be something you escape with. Could be a resource of some other media. Anything you'd like to recommend?
I'm not much of a book reader, but I do have a habit of subscribing to a few newsletters via email. That, if it's okay, I'll let my recommendations. The Morning Brew. I have 3 that I read every day. The Morning Brew, which is just and each morning I catch up on kind of what's going on in the world through the Morning Brew. It's an email delivered, and it's a really easy read. It's very topical, and it has a business lean, and I really like it. And the writers are fantastic on that one. I also get delivered Fortune's CFO daily newsletter. And I find that to be very topical and also a quick read and good. And then I also get every day that the New York Stock Exchange does some things that they'll send you, and the morning update is one I read every day. It just gives a synopsis of what's going on in the markets around the world, some critical upcoming events, what's on tap, and that usually is my three things that I'll read every single day during the week.
Perfect. Thank you for those. And we are up to our final question, Jeremy. We'd like to talk to you some more, but we'll let you go after this one. We're wondering what your priorities are as CFO over the next 12 months. What would those be?
Yeah, we've got some enhancements that we're focusing on around reporting, allowing us to improve our management reporting. So things like geographic P&Ls, product P&Ls, segment P&Ls, really trying to utilize data from across multiple sources to pull that together. And pulling it together utilizing revenue analysis that we haven't used in the past. So utilizing the tech that we have to enhance our kind of more management reporting. So that's, I think, one. Two is I mentioned this earlier, but leaning into lower cost geographies. And we've done a decent job of that here at Dayforce. I think you're going to see us lean in, and I'm pushing the team to lean in a little bit further. Modernizing our revenue recognition that I built back in 2016, 17, 18, and trying to make that a little bit more streamlined and using technology on that one. And then the last one, we've got a long roadmap for new tech. And so I am trying to create that roadmap, get the funding so that we can get it approved next year in budget, and then get that moving. We got a lot going on here at Dayforce, and we're excited.
Jeremy Johnson, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOthoughtleader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.